Welcome to this video, which demonstrates how to use ClearVantage parent-child functions for event sponsorships. An example of using parent-child functions is for golf outings in which a sponsor receives a complimentary foursome. The foursome is represented as a function. From the point of view of entering registrations, within ClearVantage or on the web, sponsors purchase that function and then their guests can be assigned to their function. Behind the scenes, what is actually happening is that the function the sponsors are purchasing is the parent function. For each purchase of the parent function, a child function is created, specific to that sponsor. The sponsor's guests are assigned to their child function. Let's step back a moment. Parent-child functions are one tool for tracking event sponsorships. In general, the simplest approach is to track sponsorships as products. In this approach, sponsors do not register for the event and do not appear in the event registration list. In cases where the sponsor will be registering for the event, including online, or where they may be selecting from a mix of sponsorship options, price types and functions are created within the event to track the sponsorship. For sponsorships that include complimentary attendees or guests, parent-child functions can be used. This allows the guests to be tracked as registrants for the event and to be specifically assigned to the sponsor. Please note, it is possible to receive a guest list from a sponsor without requiring the guests to be registered for the event. This can be done using price types and functions without using the parent-child feature. This video focuses on the parent-child feature. There are three key steps to set up parent-child functions. First, you will create a price type to be used on the sponsor's event registration. Second, you will create a price type to be used for the sponsor's guests and link it to the sponsor's price. Third, you will create the parent function that sponsors will purchase. As part of this, the number of guests allowed and a child prefix are entered. Then, during registration, each purchase of the parent function you created will cause a child function to be created behind the scenes. This child function is specific to the sponsor who purchased it. Guests can then be assigned to the sponsor's child function. Within ClearVantage, this can be done by selecting the sponsor's child function while entering the guest's registration. From the web, sponsors can enter the guests themselves. We will now demonstrate this with an example dinner event. This event costs $100 per attendee, and sponsors can purchase an entire table for $600. There are 6 seats per table. In this example, we will demonstrate entering registrations within ClearVantage as well as on the web. Let's briefly look at a regular registration before working with our sponsorships. We first set up a price type named Individual for individuals attending on their own. We set the price to $100 as that is the per seat cost to attend, and the description that we enter here is what will be displayed on the web. Throughout our example, we will set our price types to have the same options through here, such as being on the web, for members only, etc. Then, we can register the attendee through the usual process of selecting Enter Registration and selecting the price of Individual. Having completed the registration, we can now view our attendee on the registration list. Now let's set up registration for our sponsors. This is a key step in setting up parent-child functions. To do this, we enter a price type called Table Sponsor. We will set the price to $0 because we will assign the $600 fee to the parent function in just a couple of minutes. We do have the option of setting the table sponsor price to $600 instead of putting the fee on the parent function. That would work for a simple event like our dinner event. For more complicated events where sponsors may have a mix of options, a $0 price for all sponsors is probably a better approach. Now let's create our parent function, another key step. For our dinner event, we enter a function code. Then we enter a title and a description. The title will appear on the web. We will set the function price to $600 for both non-members and members. Then, to finish setting this up as a parent function, we will move to the Sponsor Details tab. Here, we set the allowed number of guests and the child prefix. The child prefix is simply a code that ClearVantage will use when creating the child functions. We will use table in this example. At this point, we are ready to register a sponsor to our event. We will open a new registration. Once we have located our sponsor, we will then select our sponsor price type. Then, having selected the price type, we will move to the Functions tab and assign the parent function. As we can see, ClearVantage then creates the sponsor's child function in the event. Ms. Williams' dinner table appears with the functions in our event. Its function code begins with table as we specified, and under the sponsor details, we see Ms. Williams listed. Now we will set up our event to allow guests to be registered. To do this, we enter another price type. We will call this price type Table Guest and give it a price of $0 because for our dinner event, guests do not pay to attend. Now we will register our guest. We open a new registration, select our guest, and then we will select the guest price type that we entered. Under the Functions tab, we assign the function belonging to the sponsor that invited this guest. Going back to Ms. Williams' child function, we will now see Mr. Smith listed as an attendee at her table. Next, we will link the guest price to the sponsor price so that sponsors can assign their guests using the member dashboard on the website. To do this, we open the sponsor's price type and set the guest price to the table guest price type that we created. This tells ClearVantage what price to use for guests that the sponsor adds from the member dashboard. Next, we will look at this from a member's point of view on the web. We are logged in as Ms. Tester and will register as a sponsor for our dinner event. We will select the dinner table sponsor price and then the dinner table function. We then proceed to check out and pay. At this point, since we purchased the dinner table function, a child function for our sponsorship has been created. We can see this in ClearVantage. As we see, another child function has been created with Ms. Tester as the sponsor. Opening the sponsor notebook, we see this reflected under the sponsor details. We can also look under the attendees to view anyone seated at this table. Please note that by default, the sponsor is not added to the table. If this needs changed, work with your analyst at Euclid. Returning to the member dashboard, we can now assign our guests to the table using the sponsorship assignment feature. We will select the sponsorship for which we wish to assign guests. Then, we can search for our guests in the system. In this case, our guests work in the same organization, so we will limit our search to our organization. Locating our colleagues, we assign them by clicking the plus button. Once assigned, we can remove them down below. As we see here, the system also informs us that we have filled 2 out of our 6 seats. We then go through the checkout process. Once we finish, we will be able to return to ClearVantage to see our guests added to our table. Back in ClearVantage, we can open the function notebook for Ms. Tester's dinner table, and under the attendees, we can see the 2 guests we assigned. If we now go to the View Registration list and open the registration for one of our guests, we see they were registered with the table guest price type, and under their functions, we can see the dinner table they were assigned. In review, there were 3 key steps to set up the parent-child function feature. We created the price type for our sponsors and called it Table Sponsor. We created the price type for the sponsor's guests and called it Table Guest. We also created the parent function. Under the sponsor details, we configured it to allow up to 6 guests, and we specified a child prefix of table. Using this setup, we sold 2 sponsorships. In both cases, the parent function was selected during the registration process. Behind the scenes, child functions were created specific to each sponsor. The first sponsorship was entered in ClearVantage by a staff member, and a guest was registered and assigned. The second sponsorship was entered by the sponsor herself from her web member dashboard. She also used the sponsorship assignment feature to register and assign 2 guests to her table. Thank you for watching this video on setting up and using parent-child functions for event sponsorships. For more information, review the events guide available on our support site or contact us.